Everyone, this is Amicia Ramsey. I am your host for the Black Mental Health Digital Weekly Show. We're talking about redefining the strong Black woman. Now, again, this is a weekly digital show to provide a space where we can talk about Black mental health as a safe space for people of African descent all across the world. Now, first off, I want to introduce our special guest, Dr. Charmaine Conner, and I want to read a bio of her so we can get a little bit more familiar with her. There she is in all her glory and wonderfulness. Now, Dr. Conner earned her PhD in counseling at the University of North Texas. Now, her dissertation focused on the experiences of Black transracially adoptive parents. She received a bachelor's of science degree in psychology from Arkansas State University and a master's of science degree in counseling with a concentration in clinical mental health counseling from the University of Memphis. Go Tigers. And Dr. Conner is a licensed professional counselor and assistant professor at Roosevelt University in Chicago. Dr. Conner, just really quickly, would you introduce yourself again to our audience and let us know what you're doing right now?
Well, good morning, everyone, or it's morning for me. I am on Central Standard Time. I thank you for the wonderful introduction, Amicia. I am currently working on some research projects relating to play therapy in the Black community, and as well as anti-racism work in counselor education.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Dr. Conner, for coming on the show. We are really excited to talk about this concept of Black mental health and redefining the strong Black woman. We have some really good things for our audience today. And I also want to welcome everyone who is watching, whether it is on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. We have all of the different platforms that we're streaming. And as Dr. Conner mentioned, we are on Central Standard Time. I'm in Memphis and she's in Chicago. However, we know that people all across different platforms across the nation of the US and also in places like Uganda and Nairobi, UK, you guys are all different times as well. So we say good morning for folks who are with us, but we also say good evening to you as well. We're also going to be taking comments as well. So if you have any comments throughout the entire hour, we will be reading them. And Dr. Conner will be more than happy to answer some of your questions that you have. So Dr. Conner, one of my first questions for you is, what is a strong Black woman? We've heard of this many, many, many times. Mm-hmm.
So I am going to define what a strong Black woman is from the context of how I try to communicate with my clients. I'll start with the traditional version. The strong Black woman is a Black woman who is able to be resilient and move past all of the challenges in her life. But I challenge my clients, the Black women that I work with, to be strong in a different way. And so what I mean by that is I try to help them understand that a strong Black woman is a woman who asks for help, helping to strip away some of those distorted beliefs. And I'm by no means a cognitive behavioral therapist, but helping them to understand that it's okay to ask for help, and kind of reframing and reworking what's been taught and what's been ingrained in us since early childhood. Since as young as I know, for me, my earliest recollection is around age 6, right after my father passed away. I had to find a way to be a strong little Black girl and go to school and act as though nothing happened. And so I always encourage the women that I work with to first ask for help, find ways to build community. And so what I mean by that is it takes vulnerability. It might take, if you and I were friends, me saying, listen, Misha, I'm really struggling today. Today is just not a good day. My mental health isn't in a good place. I need support. That takes a lot to ask of Black women to do, but it's so needed because it takes the load off of one individual. And when we're in community with one another, we can help support one another. Also, it involves the people that you are going to for support. They need to be able to be people you trust. It needs to be people that you know aren't going to try and push their beliefs onto you or push their own feelings onto you. It needs to be a space where you can be courageous and communicate what your needs are. So that asking for help piece is so important. One of the second things that I encourage strong Black women to do and kind of reframe is becoming grounded in who you are. A lot of times we take a lot of pride in the titles we have, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. However, who are you underneath those titles? Who are you?
Questions right here. Who's behind the mask of a strong Black woman? I've seen, Black women in their vulnerability, being a Black woman as herself. But when we go into society, we have to project, or seeming as though we have to project an image.
Yes. Behind the mask, we have moms, aunts, sisters, cousins, friends, coworkers. We're doctors, we're attorneys, we're counselors, we're educators, we're journalists, we are homemakers, we're wives, we are all of these different things. But who are you behind that? How have you yourself sat down and said, who am I? Who is Dr. Conner? Who is that person? When I sit back and look over my life, what do I want people to say about who I was? Not what I did, but who am I?
Absolutely. Just for a second, Dr. Conner, we have some comments that are coming in, and folks are saying good morning. There is a ticker at the bottom of the screen, just people saying where they are, what state they're from, what country they're in. And we just wanted to again say good morning or good evening to you. We have PJ watching from South Sudan, Juba. We also have Zaribi. I don't want to say everybody's name and get it messed up, because I like when people say my name correctly as well. So I want to make sure that we have recognized these people in the comments. I just see Lou Al really quickly says Black life is also very important. Together, we can change the life situation, our fellow peoples. That is so correct, Lou Al. So Dr. Conner, you mentioned that as early as age 6 is when you got this philosophy of being strong. I want to go a little bit, or at least have a conversation about the historical context of where this strong Black woman has come from. And I believe it's something that's been passed down from generation to generation, from women to young girls. And some of the ideology that I believe comes from, in some of the research that I've read articles, this concept of a strong Black woman, by some research, I want to talk about, again, the historical context. Before the idea of a strong Black woman was ever scripted into what we see on TV, media, or being played out in our lives, it was generated as a good thing in the Black community. So there are some assets to this character or this persona. And there are also some liabilities as well that we're talking about connect to Black mental health. Historically speaking, back in our experience as African Americans, this is during that antebellum or slavery time, where there were these stereotypes such as the mammy, who you probably have seen in movies, I guess maybe like Gone Like the Wind, or just any old movie where you'll see a character of a Black woman playing a housemaid or a wet nurse. And Mammy was the character that would take care of the white families and take care of the white children. And we saw that all throughout Hollywood, and that idea of what a Black woman was. And it kind of looked like the Aunt Jemimas or that undesirable character, when there was so many more facets to Black women. In order to change that or shift the narrative, Black people in the Black community took a hold of this idea that we're strong, we're independent, especially during the 70s, during that 70s movement where it was redefined. And now we see it staying in modern day time, but there really hasn't been necessarily an adjustment to that role. And putting everybody in a box could be detrimental.
Yes, it can. So this Black woman schema or archetype, or strong Black woman schema or archetype, it is riddled throughout our literature. It's a part of our own anecdotal experiences. It is something that white people believe about us, and it has some grave implications, especially, I know we're talking about mental health here, but we can't escape not talking about the implications in the physical health world. Doctors, Black women encounter doctors every day who believe that they are not in pain, and they believe that they're able to overcome whatever the medical conditions are. There are certain questions that don't get asked, and that also translates into the mental health world. A lot of times, counselors can be guilty of reinforcing that strong Black woman archetype. So a Black woman might come into a session and they're saying, I feel depressed. Well, part of our jobs are to trust them when they say that. And I'm not going to say that they're perfect mental health professionals, because there just are not. We do really great work. Every profession has good and bad, but there are some who reinforce that strong Black woman archetype by saying, well, culturally you're strong, or you've been able to get through these challenges before. How are you going to get through them now? And so we have to be careful as mental health professionals in how we engage in those conversations. And that's why it is so important, going back to those conversations that I have with my clients, allowing them to ask for help. I'm curious about how we're going to build some community so that you don't only have 1 hour where you're talking about this. You have other ways to get this energy out throughout your week, and you have a safe space to communicate what's happening for you internally. Because if not, you're going to be struggling with issues of perfectionism, wanting to be perfect, being high achieving, which, again, there's some assets there, like you said, but there are also some liabilities. It could even lead to the desire to be more in control. It could lead to neuroticism. All of these things can be impactful for the individual as well as their community around them, their family, their friends, their children, and then it gets passed on down. So just a little insight to share how this implication can connect in a real life scenario. I was 4 when my father passed away, and that was a very difficult time. And so around age 6 is when I began to act out because I wanted my dad back. Well, I was encouraged to get past it. That was happening for me as a child. On the flip side of that, for my mother, who was in her early 20s, she had 2 young girls that she had to raise. People didn't give her the grace that she needed to be able to say, hey, let her sit in that. She just lost her husband. They encouraged her to remarry early. They encouraged her to go back to work. They encouraged her to get moving and get past it. And yes, you do have to go to work and things of that sort. But this idea that she had to be strong for 2 little girls, it's all interconnected. And I hope that you all see that connection.
Absolutely. And Dr. Conner, thank you for sharing that part of your journey and your story. And I'm pretty sure many of the people viewing us can also relate to these instances where they've had to have that kick in. And to me, sometimes this persona of the strong Black woman is a survival mechanism.
It is. Yes, it is.
And how does putting on this survival coat or this mask when we go out to society, you could be suffering on the inside, and is it okay for Black women to ask for help? How do you even get to a point to ask for help when you've been putting on this veil for so long?
A part of it is taking a risk, because that's what it's going to feel like. It's going to feel like you're putting yourself out there. It's going to feel like you're letting someone in your business. But it is important to reach out to a mental health professional if you are experiencing a lot of internalizing emotions and thoughts that are keeping you from being well mentally, because what the strong Black woman archetype, as we know, it leads to is a lot of depression, anxiety, perfectionism, control issues, and other severe mental health disorders. And in turn, if you don't know how to handle it, it can lead to interpersonal relationship issues. It can lead to issues with child abuse. It can lead to issues with loss of employment because you are not able to get out of bed. All these different things can be connected to your mental health. And so I would say it is simply ask. You don't have to go to your friends. You can go and just simply do a Google search. Mental health professionals in my area, counselors in my area, psychologists in my area, and just try one. I encourage you to find a way and dig deep for that strength to be able to say, I need help and I'm going to go and get what I need. Because a part of that strong Black woman archetype is not asking for what you need, not getting your needs met, because everyone else's needs come before your own. But that's not true. You deserve to have your needs met as well.
Absolutely. And I wanted to talk about the definitions and some research on this strong Black woman schema. And Dr. Conner, you and I were talking about this a little bit earlier. And I want to post an article. It's called Superwoman Schema, African American Women's View on Stress, Strength, and Health. This is by Dr. Cheryl Giscombe. And I'm going to show you guys what we're talking about really quickly. So this is Dr. Cheryl Giscombe, and I'm going to post in the comments this article that you guys can read. It's wonderful. I have read it myself, and it breaks down the schema or the bullet points of who applies to this strong Black woman category. And just bear with me 1 second so I can post it so you guys can also read this yourself. It's really good information. Dr. Cheryl, she's the director of Interprofessional Leadership Institute for Mental Health Equity at Chapel Hill in North Carolina. Now, she's also a psychiatric nurse. Now, studying the psychological stress of health of Black women, and she developed what is called the Black Superwoman Schema, which are 5 characteristics of the Black Superwoman. And we're going to go a little bit over that this evening and this morning for you all. And I'm sorry, Dr. Conner, I kind of lost you. Okay.
Okay.
I have tabs open. So you guys can see that in the comments. I just posted it. Let's see. Perfect. That's the, okay. So this is the Black Superwoman Schema. So these are perceptions of obligation to manifest strength, an obligation to suppress emotion, resistance to being vulnerable or dependent, determination to succeed despite limited resources, and obligations to help others, in contrast of balancing self-care. Dr. Conner, can you talk about this in your knowledge or your area expertise on this Black Superwoman schema?
Yes, absolutely. So that obligation to manifest strength, that does go back to, at least in the United States, it goes back to when slavery was being enacted and the Black man was being removed from the home. And so Black women had to find a way to provide. They had to find a way to survive as well. And so that meant raising the children. It meant not sharing that they were being sexually abused by the slave owners. It meant being able to suppress every negative emotion. So the obligation to suppress emotions comes from this belief that you don't have time to sit with your emotions because things need to be done. In modern day times, Black women are expected to carry the household in very similar ways as they were back when slavery was being enacted. But this obligation to suppress emotions comes from, I have to go to work, the kids have to eat, I need to cook dinner, I need to clean up, laundry needs to be done, errands need to be ran, I'm meeting up with friends, and I have no opportunity to express my emotions, and nor do I want to, because we've been taught that it doesn't feel good to sit in your emotions, because it just doesn't.
No.
It doesn't feel good to be sad or feel good to be angry. However, how do you know how to deal with those emotions if you never have an opportunity to express or sit with them? And then this obligation or this resistance to being vulnerable or dependent, this idea that if we are vulnerable or if we have a need for someone, we're weak. And that's just simply not true. You are not weak because you're asking for help. Our counterparts, white people, ask for help all of the time. And this is in no way saying to be like them, but just normalizing, asking for help is okay. We encourage children to ask for help. So think of it this way. You have a kiddo that you're raising and they're hungry. And so instead of trying to wake you up, they decide, I'm going to fix breakfast on my own. And they go and they grab these eggs out of the refrigerator. And now when you wake up, you see a mess of cracked eggs, egg yolks all over the floor. They're attempting to try to turn on the stove and they probably shouldn't be. And now they've made a mess because they've chosen not to ask for help. So I'm encouraging you to reflect on how much of a mess are you making by not asking for help.
Dr. Conner, that's good. That is so good. And, that can be hard to penetrate through some levels to get to a point where you do ask for help. And just when I think of the strong Black woman schema, some of the people that in media that I instantly go to are like Olivia Pope with Scandal. She's a strong woman and you see her navigating through the business and she's Miss Fix It. She does everything. She fixes it all. But when things go wrong, per se, there's a meltdown. And because those emotions are suppressed, how does a Black woman get to the point of asking for help before getting to the meltdown or something worse, suppressing those emotions and feelings and going to a substance abuse, something of that nature to get that release when you don't necessarily know all the inner workings inside and how to express yourself and say, you know what, I don't have it all together.
Part of it is it starts with understanding you don't know what you don't know. So starting there and not allowing yourself to feel guilty for not knowing how to overcome these things. So that needs to be something that you start with. It's okay, because even though I'm Dr. Charmaine Conner, there are a lot of things I don't know. I'm an expert in counseling and counseling only. And so I have to give myself grace in knowing that there are just some things I don't know, and that's okay. Then from there, foster curiosity. What could help me to get through these emotions? What is something that could help me to feel okay with being vulnerable? That curiosity for you might be talking to a friend. You might ask a friend whom you know have overcome this themselves and seek out some advice for them. You may go to a mental health professional. It may simply start with you being in a reflective space. What am I feeling right now? And I'd like to encourage everyone who's viewing, take a moment and let's just sit with, how are you feeling right now in this moment? And share with us in the chat what you are experiencing, what emotion you are experiencing. So we're going to see. Oh, you're on mute, Amicia.
Sorry, and we'll be watching that feed. I'm looking at you all right now. Thomas Palmer, we have some other individuals who are leaving those comments, but just how are you feeling right now? Let's see, Dr. Inani, good evening. She's in Canada right now. So drop those comments on how you feel in this moment. I mean, Dr. Conner just perfectly expressed, earlier in the conversation that we have to sit with our feelings sometimes, and that's uncomfortable. Especially if you're a strong Black woman, you have many different hats as mother, as friend, as sister, as employer, and you're moving, or if you're involved in the church, you're on the usher board, you're doing these different things, and you're also engaged in your community. I mean, I remember, and can kind of relate till now, Vice President Kamala Harris, she mentioned that Black women have been the backbone of America, that's how strong and that strength carries in our society, and is very important.
Yes.
But as much as our strength, which we mentioned earlier, how it has been connected to having to be the breadwinner sometimes, having to be the strength when your partner necessarily is not fulfilling certain expectations, not because they can't, but because society and certain roles have positioned them to be in a certain place. So we see a lot of Black women who have to be, mother or as a grandmother taking care of other children that are in the house. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people can experience that or relate to that experience, especially as our Black experience, as we've seen that. And we do commend all those women who are honorable, who had to be strong. But, you know, we're in a new day and age society, and that's why we're having these conversations to shift the narrative and redefine strength. And a lot of people, or at least for myself, when I see someone asking for help, I see that as a sign of strength, because you say, you know what, I can admit that I don't have it all together, and you want to go from within and develop the character so you don't have to be in a shell or feel isolated or feel disconnected. Dr. Conner, what is another way to break past that barrier of feeling those feelings of suppression when we see, you know, we have to be strong in society, but at the same time, Black women, again, I want to show this. I really love this banner. That Black women are delicate individuals. They're very, you know, you see them being really strong, but how can we normalize this concept of Black women's delicate nature?
Well, it starts with, it starts with us. It starts within our community, and we also need to expand that information to other communities that we are people as well. We experience emotions, we experience these physical, anomalies. So like if I cut myself, I'm going to bleed. If I hit my elbow, I'm going to say, ouch, it hurts. And so we are delicate in the same ways. And I have emotions too. And the color of my skin does not absolve me from feeling pain. It does not absolve me from going through hardships. That doesn't say that you need to pity me, but it means that you need to have an understanding for when I tell you, this is where I am and this is what I'm experiencing. And you need to honor what my experience is in this moment. I saw some people putting in the chat some of the feelings they had. Someone said, I'm feeling calm. Another person said, I'm feeling tired. Honor yourself and encourage others to honor you. If you're tired, and if you're feeling calm, that's okay. You might not be feeling those ways later, but honoring where you are in every moment is going to be important of normalizing it. Another thing that can be very helpful is energy management. So I know we shared this in our initial conversation, but I came across a post. I wish that I could figure out the author who created this. I did find out it was a TikTok, so I don't know who the author is. But it was a very simple statement that said, I'm no longer engaging in time management. I'm engaging in energy management. And that was all that it said. There was no further explanation. But I took that for myself and conceptualized it as, I'm no longer attempting to manage time because I don't have any control over time. Time in and of itself, it is always moving. It is constant. It never stops. Me, myself, as a little human here, I don't have any control over time. But what I do have control over is my energy. And that is something that I can manage. And if I need to take a moment to sit and honor what my energy is in the moment, that's what I'm going to do.
And Dr. Charmaine Conner, we mentioned this again a little. We had a conversation off today about this, your energy and exerting it. Or at least putting forth the energy and being satisfied with what you have done for the day. I believe you were grading some papers and you said, you know what, I have all this work to get through, but if I can get through 2, I will be satisfied with that work. How do you get to a point where, as a woman who is balancing many things, or family, you have to cook dinner, how can you get to a point where you can be satisfied or put that energy forth and be like, you know what, I've tried my best for today?
This is going to sound very crass, but it boils down to, I'm replaceable. If I die today, they're going to find somebody else to come fill this assistant professor position. They're going to find someone else to see the clients that are active clients for me. My family will grieve, and they will eventually move through that grief, but I'm replaceable. So knowing that I'm not going to work any harder than what I need to. I'm not going to allow myself to engage in practices that are going to burn me out early and that are going to strip me from my passions that I have. And so that is what it boils down to for me. I'm replaceable, so I've exerted enough energy for today. And if I want to maintain me as a person, not me as Dr. Conner, not me as the counselor, but me as Charmaine, I have to maintain my energy. That has to happen.
Absolutely. I found something really quickly that I wanted to share. Use your PTO and take mental health days. I saw that online and I thought that was perfect because you said, in these roles, we are, replaceable, or, they'll agree for a moment and be on to the next. So you have to be it's so important for self-care. And I'll get to that really quickly, but I want to show this comment on here. Dr. Inani says that, thank you for doing this discussion. Believe it or not, in November last year, I went to a salon to remove my braids. In fact, I went for a massage at their spa and realized they had a salon. I excitedly asked the ladies to remove my braids. In the process, the lady asked for help from her colleague. She said, don't be scared to pull her scalp. She has a hard scalp. I'm still kicking myself for freezing on that chair and didn't undress it. This happens to us. Why do our counterparts believe that and I can't see the last part, but why do our counterparts believe that we are, I guess, it's a dehumanizing thing.
Mm-hmm. It is. It goes back to, I can't think of his name, but it started with the father of gynecology. That's where it started. This person, I'm blanking on the name, I know it, but this person put out research in the early 1800s after performing multiple unsanctioned surgeries on Black enslaved women. And from that research, he put into publication that Black women can bear a higher degree of pain than white women. That research is still being used to this day to inform policies, not only in hospitals, but it informs policies in our police forces. It informs policies in workplaces. It informs policies in academia. This belief that Black people can carry the load. That's where it comes from. It also comes from the beast theory, which was a rationalization for enslavement, that Black people were born from apes and that we are ape-like humans, and so we must be strong. There are some people that still have these underlying beliefs, and they show up in modern day times. Here in 2021, you will encounter someone who believes that, and they believe that Black women don't need anesthesia. In the mental health community, we have moved beyond that. And I'm grateful to say that we have. And when I'm speaking about mental health community, I'm speaking more so about our professionals, not psychiatrists. Psychiatrists are medical doctors, so they deal with the medical model. But the psychologists, counselors, social workers, there has been a shift. Not as quickly as I would have liked it to be, but there has been a shift in this belief that Black people can handle all things.
I have some statistics from the CDC, how we're correlating this stress to the mental health. The CDC says more than half of African-American women older than 20 are obese. And Black people also develop high blood pressure more often at an earlier age and at a rate much higher than white counterparts. Black women develop high blood pressure more so than Black men as well. And this super woman complex does also or could be connected to the birth rates for Black women. They are 2 times the weight of low birth rates when a Black woman or Black mother is expecting, and infant death mortality rates are higher than our counterparts. Can we talk about some of the disparities that do exist in the medical community, as you were mentioning, Dr. Conner, when it comes to this intolerance of pain, women going through childbirth, and medical physicians using this old dichotomy of this old ancient research that is irrelevant for today's time.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So, and I'll even connect it to mental health as well. So one of the disparities is if you go into the education system and there are Black children there. So we have what we call here in America, the school to prison pipeline. Mm-hmm. And so Black children, this is going to sound crazy, but this information came out from the Department of Education. They are 28 times more likely to be disciplined in the school setting than white children and other children of color. And so when I hear that and how Black boys are traditionally, they are seen as aggressive in the school communities, and Black girls are seen as fast, sassy, bossy, and mean girl type. So when it comes to deciding some of the mental health needs from a child's perspective, a lot of times when white children are acting up, they are offered different referrals and resources to help that child navigate through whatever they're experiencing. They're expected to go to a residential treatment facility and receive services, whereas a Black child is more likely to get in-school suspension, suspended, or to be kicked out of school altogether. And so those same disparities also happen in the medical community, just the belief system there, the lack of resources, a personal connection to that. When I hear obesity, I always cringe because a lot of that obesity comes, a lot of people think that Black people just eat wrong, but that's not the case. It is a lack of education, a lack of access to the financial resources that are needed, and a lack of understanding of what foods are needed for each person's respective bodies. Everybody can't eat the same thing. I have a medical condition in which I can't eat the same things that everyone else eats. However, people don't understand and they don't have the resources. When I lived in Memphis, something that came up in a counseling class, I was really fired up back then. And what came up in our multicultural counseling class was how that the Kroger in South Memphis, if you go to the produce section, it was riddled with gnats and the produce was old, it was spoiled, it was molded. But if you went to the Kroger in Cordova, just right up the road, right, fresh fruit. Yeah. And so just resources within the community are not provided with us regarding equity.
Absolutely. And I've been to that Kroger in South Memphis and seen that, which is why I have to travel at least 25 to 30 minutes to Cordova or Germantown to go to the grocery store to get some of the food items that I need. Mm-hmm. And I hate to backtrack, but we do have a LinkedIn user who said that the doctor of gynecology, and I also found it, the father of modern gynecology, performed shocking experiments on enslaved women. His name is James Marion Sims. So you guys can look up James Marion Sims as well to get more on the historical context of how Black women are seen as, more tolerant of pain or emotionalist beings, which we're totally not, which is why we're having this conversation. Here's another comment really quickly. Some people in this time believe in devaluing the feelings of Black women. Why are our feelings devalued?
I would say that that's a personal question to ask whomever is devaluing them. But from a concept answer or concept-based answer, this devaluing of Black women's feelings, it goes back to everyone else buying into that strong Black woman, buying into the superwoman archetype, buying into this idea that Black women have to suppress their emotions, this idea that Black women don't feel anything. That people have bought into that. There are people who hold that with regard. There are also Black people within our community that do that. I'm sure some of our listeners have had an experience where you've tried to go to a family member or a girlfriend and say, I'm really having this tough time. And it's like, oh, girl, you're okay. You just need to drink some wine real quick, or let's dance it out, or let's go out and have a good time, or let's go eat. Yeah. And that in and of itself is a form of devaluing our feelings. We need to build that community with people who will honor what we are experiencing. Not saying that that person needs to be your therapist, because you need to go and find a therapist. But it is great to have people in your corner who are like, I hear you having a really tough time. Have you shared this with your therapist? Have you shared this with your counselor? How are you working on this on your own?
Absolutely. I wanted to kind of segue into a woman who does find that strength to reach out to a friend or someone to talk about her feelings, or maybe she's to a point where she is centered and something happens to her and she's willing to be vocal about it. But then there are other archetypes or stereotypes that kind of come into play as this quote unquote, the angry Black woman that we've heard so long. When we do speak up, it is perceived as being either aggressive or angry, when merely you're just expressing that, hey, this is not okay with me and this is how I feel.
I would say to that, Black women are the only people that aren't allowed to be angry. We're the only ones that aren't allowed to be angry. I see people in all communities who get angry and they express their anger. For people who believe in Christianity, it's biblical to be angry. The Bible says be slow to anger. It doesn't say don't be angry. And that is taught to so many young Black girls. You can't be angry. That's not okay. I think as a society, we need to figure out why. Why is it not okay to sit with, I'm angry? Because there are situations you're going to encounter that are going to make you angry. How you respond to that, that's teachable. But telling us that we are not allowed to be angry, that's not okay. So one of the ways that I always challenge that narrative is when I hear someone say it, I say, well, I am an angry Black woman, and here are the reasons why I'm angry. And I have the right to be angry, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to flip tables over. But if you present me with the right context to flip a table over, I might have to flip one over if you're trying to cause harm to me. But this idea that we can't be angry, change the narrative. Let everybody know that I am an angry Black woman, and here's why.
How important is it to communicate the thoughts in our mind and express them with people? How can a way we can communicate that effectively if you do have these valid emotions, you are, and it's okay to have a wide range of emotions, but effectively communicating that to someone? Do you have any ways or tips that our viewers can take that home with them, or at least start to practice?
Yeah. So again, it goes back to you sitting with your emotions and honoring what you're feeling. And then if you have to know yourself, that goes back to that part of become grounded in who you are and understand how you do respond, because everybody may not be ready to talk. So sometimes some people who are angry, they need space. Communicate what your need is. I need space right now. There are some people who are like, I need to go and release, go and engage in some physical activity to work through any big emotions that you have. And there are some people who need to talk it out, and they need to just talk with someone. You can talk to a friend. If it's something that's pretty big, I would encourage you to reach out to a therapist to help you process through that. And if it's something that constantly comes up for you, if it's a theme in your life where you're experiencing this emotion all of the time or quite frequently, and it's impeding on your process as a person, you may need to speak to a professional. But sitting and grounding yourself in who you are, start there and figuring out, how do I respond when I'm happy? How do I respond when I'm angry? How do I respond when I'm sad? I know when I'm really happy, I like to shop. That's not always good for my bank account. So sometimes that means that maybe when I'm happy, I might need to call someone before I go to Target, because Target just, it'll get me.
Every time, some accountability. We need accountability partners whenever we go into, shop a little bit, or put a limit, put a limit and get your shop on so you can start feeling a little bit better. I think that all ties into one of the questions I was going to ask Dr. Conner is what does self-care look like? A lot of people we've heard self-care mentioned many times. It's kind of becoming a popular coin thing where it's about self-care, but there are some things that we can do to care for ourselves and to make sure that we're good internally. How important is it for us to be good on the inside? We mentioned our energy, protecting our energy. We're mentioning just different ways that we can express ourselves. And as Dr. Conner mentioned, she likes to shop. That's a form of self-care. Getting your hair done, whatever it is to take you, I guess I want to say out of an element, but to make yourself feel good in a healthy manner.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I would encourage people to really take a moment this weekend and sit down and define what self-care means for you. There are so many different definitions of self-care. I have my own. It's very simple. It's being intentional about the choices that I'm making through the day to bring me mental peace. That's what it is. That it's very simple. That choice may mean that I am going shopping because I want to go to Target, or it could mean that I'm cooking myself a meal. I'm being mindful about what I'm cooking, the seasonings that I'm using. I'm putting it on the plate in a very pretty way. That can be a form of self-care. Also, a form of self-care can be that you are sitting and reflecting over the week and noticing how stressed out you were, and you're finding ways to engage in that energy management for the upcoming week. Self-care may also mean, it's not always fun. It doesn't always have to be fun, but it could mean that you are cleaning up because you know that you've got some big projects coming up and you just don't do well when your space isn't orderly. So that might require you to clean. So whatever it is, you're being intentional about making choices that are going to bring you peace throughout your day.
That is so me. I love to make sure my space is clean, my workspace is clean. I feel so much more complete, whole, clarity. All of that happens for me when I see a spotless place. I even go to bed better when we are clean, and I can just smell the freshness of the air.
Yeah.
We have about 5 minutes or a little bit, 4 minutes. I want to also take some more comments from you guys. This is really, we're really enjoying the conversation discussion. We want you to be involved in this process. Dr. Nadi says she loves our discussion. I'll post her little comment really quickly.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And let's see. Kevin Washington has a comment here. And spending money on what you don't have, buying things that you don't need in order to impress people that you don't like can be problematic. How do you respond to that, Dr. Conner?
Absolutely. I think that people need to take some time to figure out why you're spending money. You might create a budget, and it's going to be up to the individual. Only they know what their intentions are behind this. And so that's why I said that self-care piece, it is being intentional. If I know that I need to buy groceries, then I probably don't need to be in Target. And that's me making a decision not to spend money on things that I don't need. But it's an individual practice, and it requires one to be understanding of what their needs are. And so self-care is about meeting your needs.
Right. And meeting different needs, whatever it is. And you have to also know your limitations. If you are quote unquote financially strapped, maybe doing a shopping experience is not what you can do at the time, but there are other ways that you can fulfill yourself or be happy. I mean, honestly, I'm not going to lie. If I didn't have the means to do so, window shopping is fine too. Get out, go look at what you like, feel the fabric, try it on, whatever makes you feel good on the inside. So I want to talk about that too.
I do see quite a few comments about shopping in the chat. And I just want to clarify that I'm in no way saying that shopping is the only form of self-care. Like I mentioned, you can go and work out, you can talk to a friend, you can clean up. It might require you going to therapy, doing the laundry, all these different things. So again, that definition that I gave you all is being intentional about the choices you are making each day to bring you mental peace. And you as an individual need to engage in that process of figuring out what does self-care mean to me as a person. And so your self-care isn't going to look like someone else's self-care.
Absolutely, Dr. Conner. And thank you for clarifying that as well. I saw the comments lighting up too, and I'm like, what's going on? So we have about a minute, but I also want to just tie it all in a bow. We've mentioned just a few of our banners really quickly, some questions to recap things. And then you all can tune in next week. This is a weekly digital show, 5 o'clock Eastern African time. I'm still getting used to all the different times. And there's also a post for folks who live in the United States or wherever your respective places. We have all those timings. So what we've gone over is the definition Dr. Conner mentioned of what is a strong Black woman. We said who is behind the mask of a strong Black woman. We also talked about normalizing Black women's delicate nature. And the last one is self-care. Dr. Conner mentioned that these different mechanisms of self-care will look different for each individual. Dr. Conner, is there any final words you want to share just with our audience? And I thank you so much for waking up this morning and being with us.
I am so grateful to have had the opportunity to be here with you all this morning. The only thing that I want to leave you all with, if nothing else, is to remember, figure out who you are, regardless of what your titles are. Engage in some energy management and define what self-care looks like for you.
Absolutely. And where can people find you on social media if they want to keep up with you? I know we are all on the digital space.
Yes, so I am at Dr. Charmaine L. Doctor with a period, Charmaine L. Conner on Instagram, and then if you follow me on Facebook, it's simply Charmaine Conner PhD.LPC.NCC. But I'm usually not on Facebook. If you really want to connect with me, Instagram is the way to go.
Perfect. And I put our banner up where you can see that below. It's printed quite small, but that's where you can keep up with Dr. Conner on Instagram. Again, she's not really on Facebook like that. So if you add her on Facebook, you probably will best bet will be on Instagram. I follow her on Instagram myself. Thank you all so much for your comments, participating in this conversation discussion today. We really appreciate it. We are challenging different stigmas. We're challenging and redefining Blackness in general, because it needs to be done, and these conversations need to be had, even though they are tough. But at the same time, they need to be shared. So we thank you so much, and tune in next week. We'll have another topic for you, and we just thank you so much, you guys. Be blessed. Have a good one. Bye-bye.